Good evening, I'm Esther Gidui. It's Monday, May 13th. This is Africa 54. South Africa's African National Congress wins re-election, but with a reduced majority. Sudanese protesters vow to remain steadfast through Ramadan. And despite a winning record, Nigeria's women's football team struggles to secure funding. Members of South Africa's African National Congress Party are feeling jubilant on Monday after thousands of them took to the streets of Johannesburg Sunday to celebrate their party's victory in last week's election. Party members celebrated despite receiving a lower share of the vote, with the ANC winning 57.5% of the parliamentary vote. This was ANC's worst performance since the end of white minority rule in 1994, when the party swept to power under Nelson Mandela. To supporters of President Cyril Ramaphosa, the ANC victory was an endorsement of his corruption-fighting agenda after replacing Jacob Zuma. Ramaphosa's first full term as president is expected to start later this month after his nomination by ANC lawmakers in the new parliament. Now, in the midst of Ramadan, Sudanese protesters remain unwavering in their quest to force the nation's military council to hand over power to a civilian-led government sooner rather than later. Scores of demonstrators in central Khartoum are continuing their sit-in outside the defense ministry during the Muslim fasting month. Lauren Anthony reports.
A defiant stand through the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. These Sudanese protesters say they plan to continue their sit-in while fasting. They're locked in a standoff with the country's new military rulers and want the Transitional Military Council to hand over power to civilians.
We are happy with all our youth. These young men came from all over Sudan, from all provinces and all areas. They are here and they are suffering. All day they are here directly under the sun. There are no fans or shelters. No one comes to a place like this unless they have a case to defend, unless they have something to fight for and take back. They will be awarded with what is better.
The protesters are being supported by dozens of volunteers, many of whom have made their way to the capital to play their part in what they say is best for Sudan. Like these women, who spend their day preparing the evening iftar meal, which marks the end of the fast.
We're standing with our children, the protesters, demonstrators and fighters. We want the revolution and a new Sudan. We're standing with them, standing to feed them and quench their thirst. As we stay up with them here all the way till morning. We stay up and stand with them so that they can find the strength to chant, to sleep, to have strong hearts. Crowds always come here, and we're always here for them.
After the sun has set and prayers come to a close, demonstrators pick up the pace, chanting freedom, peace and justice as they rally in the main avenue outside the Defence Ministry. Despite the searing heat, they're determined to stay put and say the revolution is the people's choice.
That report was by Lauren Anthony of Reuters. It is the second week of the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. During a visit to VOA, Imam Horsed Noah, Executive Director of the Abu Bakr Siddiq Islamic Center in Columbus, Ohio, and Outreach Director of the Somali Islamic Center in Ohio, spoke with Africa 54 Managing Editor Vincent McCory about fasting in America and security concerns among Muslims during Ramadan.
This Ramadan comes at a time when the Islamophobia is not only a million-dollar industry with powerful institutions and powerful, very influential figures, but also it's much worse than the aftermath of September 11. So because of that, you have about 56% of the people in this country who believe that Muslims are against their values and how they live. Now, with that comes an increased level of attack of the places of worship. And it's really very dangerous, some of the rhetoric that's out there these days. To give you a couple of examples, recently we have heard, and I have seen also personally, a new group called, Squad Surveillance that are talking about how to attack the Muslims and their places of worship. We have prayer Bureau of Islamic American Relations. We have Act Now Patriots. These are really armed individuals who want to harm the Muslim community, who want to harm the mosques. So this Ramadan comes in that context.
Now, within this short time, or in the last few weeks, has there been any specific threat to a mosque or to a Muslim community here in the United States, in your neighborhood, Columbus, Ohio?
We haven't had any real threat in our neighborhood, but we know that mosques that have received a message of threat, mosques that there were vandalism, we have seen harassment outside of the mosques. But in our neighborhood, we're very grateful to say that the law enforcement have been really very active protecting our community.
Now, talking about law enforcement, what kind of collaboration have you had with the law enforcement and other agencies to ensure that this month can pass peacefully and that there won't be any actual attack on any Muslim, regardless of the threats that may be out there?
Good. Well, right after the tragedy of New Zealand, we have contacted them. We've told them that this is the first time that someone who's loaded and broadcasting live while he's killing Muslims in the mosque. We have never seen this. So they came to our mosques and we invited them to our mosque. They did security assessment. From that day on, they started to do regular patrolling around the street, around the mosque. They always come there in the parking lots. And we have had a very close working relationship with our law enforcement. And they even gave us training how to identify a suspicious activity. They have talked to our security volunteers at the mosque also.
And some people will tell you that these threats are not just against Muslims. I mean, we have seen temple or churches being attacked in the United States. We've seen also Jewish places of worship being attacked.
Absolutely. Synagogues, the African-American churches, the Sikhs, the temples. We have had 2 weeks ago 5 family members from the Sikh community who were murdered. So again, what we see is not only the mosques, but an increased attack of the places of worship, regardless of, if you're from the Jewish community or the African-Americans or any church, any denomination. So this is something that a new, strange phenomenon, unfortunately.
Talking about Ramadan, someone out there may want to know, how is it here in the United States as compared, say, to Somalia or to Kenya or those in other parts of Africa? How do you compare having to observe Ramadan here?
Well, back home, and I've recently come back from Horn of Africa, every few blocks you have the mosque, and you hear the caller of the adhan, you hear the Allahu Akbar, and from corner to corner, there is a sense of spirituality. There is not a lot of fear. The family coming together, breaking their fast together. But here we have, people working during the time of breaking the fast. You have people who are in a school or, whatever they are doing. So there is a lot of difference when it comes to the dynamics and the environment and even the spirituality. So I think every Muslim would really wish, at least in this holy month, to be a place where he can hear the Allahu Akbar and the Ashhadu an la ilaha, all of this.
Yeah.
Imam Horsed Noah is the Executive Director, Abu Bakr Siddiq Islamic Center in Columbus, Ohio, and Outreach Director of the Somali Islamic Center, Ohio, speaking with VOA's Vincent McCory. Now, 6 people are dead, including a priest, following a gun attack outside a Catholic church in Burkina Faso on Sunday. It was the second attack on Christians in 2 weeks in a nation increasingly overrun by jihadists. Worshippers were leaving church around 9 a.m. local time in the town of Dablo when some 20 gunmen opened fire, according to a government statement and local sources. The Dablo mayor told reporters that the attackers also burned the church, looted a pharmacy and several other shops before leaving. U.S. President Donald Trump campaigned on an image as master negotiator and top deal maker, but 2 years into his presidency, major foreign policy successes remain elusive. Here's VOA's White House correspondent, Patsy Widakuswara.
The U.S. deploys an aircraft carrier strike group to the Middle East, responding to what Washington said was threats of Iranian attack on American forces in the region. Meanwhile, North Korea conducts 2 weapons tests in less than a week, complicating Washington's efforts towards denuclearization. And in Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro still holds power after months of unrest and U.S.-supported opposition.
Everywhere in the world, we have some area of confrontation.
Trump campaigned as the ultimate deal maker. So far, he has taken the U.S. out of deals, including the Iran Nuclear Pact, the Paris Climate Accord, and the Trans-Pacific Partnership. He has yet to replace them. Trump has declared victory over Islamic State, but the Easter bombings in Sri Lanka show the terrorist group is far from defeated. Beyond a lack of clear wins, some scholars question whether Trump has a coherent foreign policy strategy.
It's transaction by transaction and area by area, and in many ways far more opportunistic than determined by any given sort of consistent policy.
While a transactional approach may have short-term benefits, analysts say it projects unreliability and creates openings for foreign powers.
That's why we're seeing the Chinese being mentioned more of a potential partner for security, economic cooperation, and so forth, or the Russians, for that matter, who are now more involved in security calculations of Middle Eastern countries than probably any time since the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991.
Trump campaigned on America First in 2016 and hopes to sell the success of his approach ahead of 2020. He often touts victory in prompting NATO members to spend more on defense, and he links his economic wins at home to his foreign policy achievements.
Every time a foreign leader, a president, a prime minister, a king, a queen, a dictator, we got some of them too, every time they come into the office, they say, congratulations on what you've done for this economy. It's the hottest on earth.
Polls show only 40% of Americans approve of Trump's foreign policy, with views split along party lines. Analysts say these divisions at home impact how America is viewed around the world.
It's really hard to talk about foreign policy in a way that doesn't depend on a united American front. In other words, you need to be able to say, hey, this is us, this is who we are, and this is why we're taking on them, another country, another policy, another government. And I think that's one of the pitfalls of the strategy he's using. It makes it harder to sound like there's a unified American people in opposition to perhaps another country or another party or policy.
With a strong U.S. economy, analysts say Trump's foreign policy record may be a target for opposition Democrats in the 2020 campaign. Patsy Widakuswara, VOA News at the White House.
The United Nations says the redeployment of Houthi forces from key ports in Yemen went into accordance with established plans. The redeployment effort started Saturday according to an agreement in December reached in Sweden between Yemeni's government and the Iran-allied Houthi rebels. The UN is slated to verify on Tuesday the first phase of the Houthi troop withdrawal, a key step toward ending the 4-year war in Yemen. We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54.
South Africa's Garden Route National Park offers visitors lush forests and a dramatic coastline. But the biodiversity of the 650 square kilometer park is under threat from invasive species.
The number one threat in the Garden National Park for biodiversity at this point is alien species. Alien plant species. We have a diversity of species, about 200 alien species, but only about 10 or 15 to 20 maybe are transformer species that really can change your area.
The invasive plants compete with the scrub and trees that are endemic to the area. Wildfires in 2017 and 18 damaged much of the forest. But the destruction made it easier for park rangers to identify and eradicate invasive species.
Fire also affords one the opportunity to be able to walk into the area because there are less indigenous vegetation immediately behind it. Your alien plants grow faster than indigenous, so you see them in the first 2 or 3 years. So you have that window of opportunity where you have to kill them before they make seed. If you can do that, then you gained a lot from having the fire.
What is key is to ensure that there are follow-up control measures that are put in place so that if there had been a fire, then you actually control the regrowth of invasive alien species after the fire.
New indigenous species are still being found in the park.
There's a sense of awe and wonder still in a lot of these tucked away places. And at the same time, there's species of plants that...
We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also, check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Still to come, why are Nigeria's Super Falcons earning significantly less than their male counterparts?
I am Sheikh Sali, host and senior editor of VOA's international calling talk show, Straight Talk Africa.
Today we'll examine the tobacco industry.
We pretty much touch on anything that you can think of. Politics, health issues, human rights issues, you name it, we talk about it. The issues that we discuss are pertinent to most people on the African continent. A very, very rare and unique opportunity to interact with their leaders.
The lyrics could be French,
English,
Portuguese,
Bantu,
Arabic.
It is the beat.
The African beat that counts.
The beat does all the translations.
It cuts across all languages and gives us the understanding that this is the African beat.
It is so distinct
and adhesive.
It binds us together.
African beat on the Voice of America. For more information, visit our website at www.voanews.com/AfricanBeat.
I'm Clara Frank, and here's what's trending. Miko Deo is like many other young Tanzanians living in Dar es Salaam. But he also has a rare skin condition, vitiligo, meaning his cells that produce the pigment melanin have stopped functioning, leaving white patches on his skin. The 23-year-old first noticed his skin changing 13 years ago. Initially embarrassed and ashamed, he's since fought back by pursuing a career in modeling in an effort to rally against both the stigma and self-doubt. Miko is already making a regional impact. Last year, he was selected as Tanzania's top male model at Swahili Fashion Week. Next up, performer Rihanna has made her mark in music and cosmetics. And now the Barbadian singer is about to become a major player in fashion. She's teamed up with the French luxury goods group LVMH, home of Louis Vuitton, Christian Dior, and Givenchy. They're backing her to launch a new brand dubbed Fenty. It's a rare move by the French group to build a new brand from scratch. Red carpet appearances will make her a powerful ambassador for her own goods. And having over 70 million Instagram followers won't hurt either. And finally, these dancers at a London ballet company are not simply warming up. They're also staging a revolution. What might be viewed as a small detail during class, putting on their ballet shoes, is being hailed as an important move for diversity in the ballet world. That's because their point shoes, the specially made shoes that ballerinas wear to allow them to dance on the tips of their toes, are brown rather than staple pink. Brown ballet point shoes are being made for the first time in Britain. The maker, Freed of London, is also now producing ballet tights and socks in brown and bronze. And that's what's trending today.
Stocks are down on Wall Street Monday after China said it would impose tariffs on $60 billion worth of imports from the U.S., retaliating after President Donald Trump hikes taxes on $200 billion worth of Chinese goods shipped to America and moved to slap duties on another $300 billion of Chinese exports. China's finance ministry says its new 5 to 25% tax will begin on June 1st. Here's VOA's Ladza Hook.
U.S.-China trade talks ended without an agreement on Friday in Washington, hours after President Trump raised tariffs to 25% on more than $200 billion worth of Chinese imports.
I happen to think that tariffs for our country are very powerful. You know, we're the piggy bank that everybody steals from, including China.
The tariffs the U.S. imposed last year on $250 billion worth of Chinese goods and the retaliatory tariffs China has put on more than $100 billion worth of U.S. goods have hurt some U.S. businesses, such as the Lobster Company in Maine.
This winter, compared to last winter, our business is down 60%, and that 60% is basically made up 100% of Chinese exports that we do.
U.S. Senator Rand Paul, a Republican, expressed his concern Sunday that the tariffs could undermine the U.S. economic growth.
The president is playing a negotiating battle with the Chinese, and I think he feels that at this point they can't really back out. I think there are ways the Chinese market could open up, and that would be good, but I still have advised the administration, get this done, because the longer we're involved in a tariff battle or a trade war, the better chance there is that we could actually enter into a recession because of it.
The president's chief economic advisor, Larry Kudlow, told Fox News Sunday that the Chinese are likely to retaliate.
We may know more today or even this evening or tomorrow. Yeah, I reckon they will. We'll see what they come up with. So far, we haven't heard on that basis.
Some economic analysts say the United States could be hurt more by the tariffs than China.
They're still trading freely with the rest of the world for the most part. And the aggressive actions by President Trump have in some ways isolated the U.S. from a lot of its allies who otherwise might be adding to the pressure on China. Politically, as a country that is not a democracy, they may also have the ability to withstand the pain better than the Trump administration.
The White House economic advisor acknowledged that U.S. importers and not China will be paying tariffs on Chinese imports. But he said the pressure on Beijing is necessary because the Chinese had backtracked from some of the commitments they had made earlier. The United States wants to ensure Beijing's compliance on those commitments by having them written into Chinese law. Zlatica Hoke, VOA News, Washington.
It's time for our Monday Sports Report, and joining us now is Sandy Shomari. Take it away, Sandy.
Thank you, Esther. And over the weekend, in the UK Premier League, Manchester City made history after winning their second successive Premier League title. City had been pushed down to the wire by Liverpool as they defended their title by a single point, 98 to Liverpool's 97. They celebrated in front of their fans outside the Etihad Stadium after traveling back from Brighton, where they secured a 4-1 victory, receiving a hero's welcome after wrapping up the first back-to-back Premier League titles in a decade. Liverpool also, on the other hand, broke a new record with their tally being the highest for any runner-up in the league's history. Manchester City's coach, Pep Guardiola, thanked Liverpool for pushing Manchester City to new heights this season. And in the NBA playoffs, Toronto Raptors forward Kawhi Leonard made history on Sunday after making the first Game 7 buzzer beater in the NBA history when his fadeaway jumper bounced 1, 2, 3, 4 times on the rim before falling through in the net in Toronto's 92-90 win over the Philadelphia 76ers. The Raptors will next travel to Milwaukee for the Eastern Conference Finals, where they face the top-seeded Milwaukee Bucks in Game 1 on Wednesday. Philadelphia's Joel Embiid walked off the court in tears following the big loss, saying that he can't explain what really happened. And in tennis, men's world #1 Novak Djokovic beat Stefano Sisyphus to win the Madrid Open for a third time. Djokovic's victory was also a record, equaling 33rd Masters 1000 title for the Serbian, drawing him even with his great rival Rafael Nadal at the top of all-time list. The Serbian beat the 20-year-old Greek 6-3, 6-4 in 1 hour and 32 minutes. Djokovic raced into a 3-0 lead in the opening set after Sisyphus in the second game. And now on to soccer. Nigeria's women's football team, the Super Falcons, who dominate the African Women's Championship, complain of low salaries, delayed paychecks, and being treated as second-class players to the men's team. Timothy Obiezu reports from Abuja.
31-year-old Tochukwu Oluehi is Nigeria's #1 goalkeeper on the women's national team, the Super Falcons. They've won almost every African Women's Championship since 1991, 9 out of 11 recognized titles. Despite their record, she and her teammates say they are too often overlooked and underpaid.
We are the people, bringing glory to the land. So they should look into female. They should try and, concentrate more on female and leave the boys. The boys are earning more than the girls.
Nigeria's women's national team depends on government funding, but players say their bonuses are less than a third of the payout for the men's national team, the Super Eagles, who have won 3 African titles. Nigeria's sports ministry says while public demand and corporate sponsorship affect salaries, they have improved on the women's team.
I know what it used to be for the Falcon in terms of remuneration after a game. But this present administration, to be sincere with you, has lifted them from nowhere to where they are, which is a bit by far comfortable and better in African context.
Despite the challenges at home, Nigeria's Super Falcons are preparing for this summer's Women's World Cup in France.
Everything is good. All players are fit, no injuries at all, and that is a good start.
Nigeria's women's team has been to every World Cup since 1991, but only once made it to the quarterfinals. Timothy Obiezu for VOA News, Abuja.
And from that report, that wraps our sports stories for today. Esther, back over to you.
Let us talk a little bit about that league, because I'm a little intrigued at how it ended yesterday.
I'm telling you, this league, Esther, was a marathon between Liverpool and Manchester City. Manchester City were on the top, Liverpool second, and all the time it was like a marathon. They kept running against each other. And this year, Liverpool lost only 1 game, but they couldn't make it to the championship. But as you see, Manchester City lost 4 games, but they still became the champions. But the good thing was they had fewer draws, while Liverpool had like 7 games draw.
So what's
but
the
anyway, they had a good year. As far as you see, the coach of Manchester City praised the Liverpool that you gave us a run for our money.
Now, well, we're celebrating that the women in Nigeria are complaining for less pay.
I mean,
what's that about?
And guess what? This is the best team in Africa. As far as women's soccer is concerned, they are playing out their hearts, winning a lot of games. And now they're going to the coming World Cup in France, Women's Soccer World Cup. So you can imagine these ladies are doing a great job. So I think it's about time. When they complain, you can understand.
All right.
Yes,
Thank you so much, Sunday.
You're welcome.
All right. Join Sunday Shomari each Monday for another sports edition. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, have a good evening.